Well, hello, I didn't see you there. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Canon 50mm and the Sony 50mm. You know, out of all days that I went outside to get some B-roll, I had to go in the one day where it's over 100 degrees outside. Alright, so I wanted to make a quick little video comparing these two lenses since, I mean, they're both 50mm. I've always wondered what's the difference between these two, and I was actually able to find some. Now, the camera I'm using is the Sony a7S II, but for the longest time I've been using this Canon 50mm along with this Fotodiox adapter. But the thing, I've had some issues with it. Every time I was out on a shoot and I wanted to use the 50mm, I had to put the lens on, and then when it was on, then turn the camera on, and then I had to do this. I had to re-click it again, and sometimes it would be at, the f-stop would be at 22, and the image would be obviously at 1.8, and it was very unreliable in that kind of situation when I needed to be quick, get some B-roll shots, and so then I decided to sell my 50mm and get this Sony one. Since I am on a Sony camera, I've got to say, changing from Canon to Sony has been amazing. I do prefer Canon glass, but with running gun shoots, honestly, this does what I need it to do. It's very fast, it's reliable, it's not gonna glitch out on me like this one. One time I was out filming some interview with some cops, and I was trying to press record, but the camera didn't recognize the lens, so I was there doing that back and forth, and it didn't want to work at all. And for those people who might say, oh, well, it's your adapter, well, it is a cheap adapter. But yeah, I decided to borrow a friend's 50mm and just run some tests between the two. I wasn't really expecting to find anything, but I did find a few things that I feel some people might want to know. Okay, so let's start off by looking at the build quality of these two lenses. Now, off the bat, the Canon's the winner by far. This one feels more sturdy, it feels more secure. If I were to drop any of these two, I feel like the Sony would shatter immediately. But overall build quality, I have to give it to Canon. For some reason, this Sony one, even though it's more expensive, it does feel cheaper. The Sony has a plastic feel. It is lighter, even though it is taller than the Canon one. I also have to say that this Canon is easier to focus with. The focus ring, there's something about it that just feels, it makes focusing easier. With this Sony one, it's not bad at all, but using these two back to back, I always felt like I was nailing my focus more with the Canon one. Not to say the Sony's bad, it just felt, I had to double check to make sure I was good. Okay, so let's talk about price. This Canon lens will go for about $125 on B&H, while the Sony lens will go for about $250. Obviously, this Canon one is cheaper, but if you're using a Sony camera, then you're gonna have to get an adapter. And the Fotodiox adapter that I use is about another $100, so that's still cheaper than this one 50mm lens. Again, I have to give that point to Sony. Wait. I have to give that point to Canon. Sony's a little overpriced. Okay, so now for what most people are gonna be looking at, and that's the image quality. So I went outside and just got a few shots in my backyard, and I noticed something interesting. The Canon one has more of a magenta tint in the shadows, while the Sony one has a more greenish tint. Now indoors, whenever I did tests with my dog, I couldn't really see much of a difference personally. Let me know if you see something, but to me it looked the same. Now Canon's been known for having better color science, so that's not a surprise. Personally, I actually prefer the image off of the Sony 50mm. I'm not sure why, but there's something about it that I actually like a little more. Maybe it's because I'm used to shooting with Sony, so who knows. Sharpness wise, I feel like it's a tie between these two. I was really looking into it and I couldn't see much of a difference. I feel like the Sony one might be ever so slightly sharper, but I'm not sure honestly. So you can look at the footage and decide for yourself which one looks better. Now on to autofocus. So autofocus isn't something I use that often, but the only times I really use it is for running gun filming. Like for example, this YouTube video, if I'm out getting some B-roll on a gimbal, an autofocus is super useful. It was impossible for me to get this working on my A7S. And again, that has to be because of the adapter. I will say that I do feel more safer with the Sony 50mm. And the reason for that is because the Canon's given me so much problems. It stressed me out whenever I didn't need to be stressed, and that's really a big factor for me. Yes, this may have better color, this may be sturdier, but at the end of the day, the Sony one is the one that makes shooting easier for me, and that's kind of the whole point of this. And to get a good image, obviously. But image quality wise, I think they're both kind of the same other than the color, but you know what? That's what color correction is for, so yeah. So overall, if you're on a Sony camera and you're deciding between these two lenses, go with the Sony one. Don't stress yourself out with the Canon lens. It's given me so many issues in these last few years, and just using these for a couple of shoots, I could tell it's a keeper. It's a good one. This can't replace the Rokinon 50mm, but for running gun shoots where I'm on a gimbal, this is exactly what I need. Now, I will say that only applies if you have a Sony camera. If you have a Canon camera, don't buy the Sony one. It's not worth it. Overall, the Canon lens is better. It's sturdier, easier to focus, slightly better colors, and I like the lens overall more, but it's just not for me. It slows my workflow down, and you know, when I'm out on a shoot and I have some cops waiting for me to get this thing working, you know, that's very stressful. So it's worth paying $100 more for that reliability. If you own a Sony camera and you want a 50mm, then just go for the Sony one. But if you're on anything else, then go with the Canon one. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comments below, which lens would you prefer? The Canon 50mm or the Sony 50mm? I'm curious what your answer will be, since I don't really hear a lot of discussion between these two lenses. Sony has a lot of room for improvement, I will say that. For $250, I wish I could get more. I will say this is overpriced, but you know, if it makes my life easier, I'll pay for it. That's my motto, you know? Why struggle? Why stress? Why stress yourself out? Why risk embarrassing yourself and looking unprofessional in front of clients, you know? Don't do that. But yeah, if you're interested in buying any of these lenses, I will have links in the description below. And until next time, keep watching the skies.